It started like any other Thursday morning on Maple Glen Drive, quiet, predictable, and filled with the low hum of sprinklers and the distant bark of someone's overexcited golden retriever. But when I walked outside to take my trash can back in, I noticed something odd. My garbage bags were gone. Not torn open or scattered like raccoons got to them. Just gone. At first, I thought maybe the waste company had started double pickups. Maybe they switched routes or something. But when I glanced over at my neighbor Jill's driveway, I saw her standing there too, hands on hips, looking just as confused. Her can was empty as well, and she hadn't even wheeled it out yet that morning. That's when she yelled over, "Mark, did they take yours too?" "Yeah," I said, walking over. "But not like usual. They didn't even touch the recyclables. Just the trash bags." Jill frowned. "That's weird. Rick across the street said his were missing on Tuesday too. Thought it was kids playing around." We both stood there, staring down Maple Glen Drive, our clean, quiet street suddenly looking a little less friendly. For years, our cul-de-sac had been one of those overly safe neighborhoods where people left bikes out overnight and never locked their car doors. The kind of place where a neighborhood watch Facebook group existed mostly to complain about fireworks or lost cats. But this was different. Someone was going house to house. And for what? Trash? That night, Jill posted about it in the group. "Anyone else notice missing trash bags lately? Happened to me and Mark today. Might be worth checking cameras." By the next morning, the comments were full of people saying the same thing. Bags disappearing. Always late at night, sometime between 2 and 4 a.m. No mess, no noise, just gone. That's when Todd, the self-appointed head of our neighborhood watch, and the guy who still wore his orange vest even when walking his dog, decided to launch an investigation. He set up a meeting at the community clubhouse that Saturday and asked everyone with cameras to bring footage. Before I tell you what I saw next, tell me this: where are you watching from right now, and what time is it? I love seeing how far these stories travel. And hey, if you enjoy these kinds of neighborhood mysteries, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps me share more stories like this one. Back at the meeting, it felt like a scene straight out of a detective movie, except with Costco snacks and folding chairs. Todd stood up front, wearing his watch badge like he worked for the FBI, while a handful of neighbors whispered theories. Jill leaned over to me and said, "I bet it's raccoons. Smart ones." Then Todd turned off the lights and hit play on the first clip. The room went quiet. It was 2:47 a.m. from a doorbell cam on Cedar Loop, just 2 streets over. A dark sedan rolled slowly up the street. The headlights dimmed, and someone in a hoodie stepped out, grabbed 2 trash bags from a bin, tossed them in the trunk, and drove off. Smooth. Quick. No hesitation. Then another video played. Different night. Same car. Same behavior. "Okay," Todd said, pausing the footage. "This isn't random. They're hitting multiple houses in the same area, always on pickup night." "Why would anyone want trash?" Jill muttered. "Identity theft," someone said. "People throw out mail all the time." "Or it's someone homeless, collecting cans or food," another voice added. I watched the screen, replaying that shadowy figure in my head. The movements weren't erratic or desperate, they were careful. Like someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. After the meeting, Todd asked me to help check footage from my end of the block. I had a camera that faced the street, so I agreed. That night, I scrolled through hours of footage, sipping cold coffee while fast-forwarding through cats, delivery trucks, and moths flying into the lens. Then, at exactly 3:12 a.m., there it was. The same car. A dark gray sedan, maybe a Honda. It stopped in front of my house, just outside the camera's range, but I caught a glimpse of the driver's arm gloved, with something reflective on the wrist. A watch or bracelet, maybe. He grabbed one bag, looked around, then moved on to Jill's house next door. The whole thing lasted under 20 seconds. I paused the video, staring at the still frame, that faint glint on the driver's arm catching the porch light. Something about it felt off. Too deliberate. The next morning, I showed Jill and Todd the footage. Todd immediately wanted to set up a stakeout. "Friday night," he said, grinning like a kid. "We'll park a few cars down the street, cameras ready. Let's catch this guy in action." I wasn't so sure. But the truth is, I wanted to know too. So that Friday, we did it. 3 cars, lights off, parked along the street. Jill brought snacks, Todd brought walkie-talkies, and I brought my camera. We waited from midnight till almost 3 a.m., trading half-whispered jokes to stay awake. Then, just as we were about to call it a night, a car appeared at the end of the block. Same shape. Same slow crawl. Todd whispered, "That's him." We crouched down, barely breathing. The sedan rolled past one house, then stopped right in front of mine. A figure stepped out, hood up, gloves on, flashlight in hand. They grabbed a bag, popped the trunk, and... "Wait," Jill whispered. "Is that a badge?" I squinted through my lens. She was right. There was a faint glint on his chest, not from a necklace or reflection, but from something metallic. Something shaped like a badge. And just like that, he was gone again. Trunk shut, car gone before we could move. Todd exhaled, eyes wide. "You saw that, right? That wasn't a regular thief." "No," I said slowly, replaying the image in my head. "It wasn't." And that was the moment I realized, this wasn't just about missing trash bags anymore. Someone official-looking was going through our garbage, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly where they were from. By the next morning, word had spread like wildfire through Maple Glen. The trash thief footage had already made its way around the neighborhood watch group chat, and people were practically demanding an emergency meeting. Everyone wanted to know who that badge belonged to. Todd called for a Sunday evening meeting at the community center, the same beige-walled building we used for holiday potlucks and HOA hearings. When I walked in, it was standing room only. People crowded around the projector, whispering theories like they were in a courtroom drama. "Maybe it's police doing surveillance," someone said. "Or code enforcement checking for illegal dumping." "No way," another man snapped. "They'd have to notify us for that. This is trespassing." Jill waved me over to where she was sitting in the back. "You brought the clip, right?" I nodded, pulling out a USB drive. I wasn't planning on being the center of attention, but Todd immediately spotted me and gestured to the projector. "Mark, show them what you found." So I did. The room went silent as the video played. 3:12 a.m., headlights dim, a hooded figure moving smoothly from can to can, the faint reflection of what looked unmistakably like a badge pinned to the chest. When the screen froze on the still frame, the chatter exploded. "That's a city car," someone shouted. "No, look at the stance, that's not a cop. Who else wears gloves and a badge around here?" Then Jill said it, almost in a whisper, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Neighborhood watch volunteers wear badges." Everyone turned toward Todd. He froze, holding up his hands defensively. "Whoa, hang on. Nobody from our watch is assigned to do anything like this. I run the patrol schedule myself. It's mostly camera checks and reporting suspicious vehicles. That's it." A man in the corner, Pete from Oak Lane, crossed his arms. "You sure about that, Todd? Because last month you said there were some pilot programs the board approved. What if this is one of those?" Todd looked genuinely confused. "The board approved more funding for cameras, not for trash collection at 3 a.m.? Jill interrupted. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. I'd never seen my neighbors so agitated. Normally, the biggest drama around here was someone painting their mailbox the wrong shade of beige. But now, people were angry and scared. Todd finally sighed. "Look, I'll contact Cameron about this." That name, Cameron, made a few people groan. Cameron was the HOA president. A guy who treated every community rule like federal law. He'd been the one pushing for tighter safety protocols for months, installing new street cameras and promoting the watch's community cooperation program. "What if Cameron already knows?" Jill asked quietly. Todd frowned. "Then he'll explain it." The next morning, I decided not to wait. I walked down to the HOA office, a converted townhouse that doubled as their headquarters. Cameron's car was parked out front, his spotless silver BMW, polished enough to see your reflection. Inside, he was sitting at his desk, typing something when I knocked. He looked up with that politician smile he always wore. "Mark, how can I help you?" I got straight to the point. Someone's been stealing trash bags around the neighborhood, and we caught him on camera. He had a badge. Cameron's smile didn't falter, but his eyes flickered for just a moment. "A badge?" "Yeah," I said, pulling out my phone. "Here, I can show you." He raised his hand. "No need." Todd already told me. The board is aware. The board. I repeated. So this is official. Cameron leaned back in his chair, exhaling dramatically. Mark, let's not get carried away. There's a lot of sensitive material in our community's waste stream. People throw out things that can create liability issues. Medical waste, prescription labels, confidential documents. We've been piloting a verification program to ensure nothing dangerous ends up mishandled. I stared at him. You're saying the HMA is auditing people's trash? Monitoring, he corrected. For safety purposes. I laughed under my breath. You realize how insane that sounds, right? People's garbage is private. You can't just take it. He smiled again, the same empty expression I'd seen him use at every board meeting. Actually, once waste is placed on public property, it's no longer private. It's considered abandoned material. Perfectly legal to inspect under municipal code. That's when I realized, this wasn't just some rogue volunteer. Cameron knew exactly what was happening. Before I could say anything, he added, and Mark, I'd appreciate it if you didn't spread rumors about our safety initiatives. It's important the community feels secure. I left the office seething. The arrogance in his tone made my blood boil. But more than that, his words didn't add up. He'd said they were checking for hazardous waste, but the person we caught on camera wasn't wearing any gloves or protective gear beyond thin driving gloves. And if this was really sanctioned, why do it at 3 a.m.? That night, I called Brian, my old coworker who used to do network security audits for a living. If anyone could help me dig into what Cameron and the HMA were hiding, it was him. When he picked up, I said, "Hey, you up for a little suburban espionage?" Brian laughed. "Depends. Is it illegal?" "Not yet," I said. We met at my place an hour later. I showed him the footage, told him about the badge, the conversation with Cameron, everything. He didn't say much at first, just nodded and tapped his pen against his notebook. Then he asked, "Did you ever wonder where all those new street cameras are connected?" "What do you mean?" "Well," he said, pulling out his laptop, "those aren't city cameras. They're privately owned. Guess who controls the access network for them?" I frowned. "The HMA?" He nodded. "And if they're already accessing camera data, it's not a stretch to think they're linking that to other data sources, what people throw away." I leaned back, processing that. "You think they're running some kind of neighborhood surveillance network?" Brian shrugged. "Wouldn't be the first time a community overstepped. But if we're going to find out, we'll need proof. Logs, server access, maybe even a connection between the trash collection and the watch's database. So how do we get it?" He smiled. "We start with what we can see, your neighborhood's IP traffic. If they're pulling data from your cameras, or anyone's, we'll catch it." As he started setting up his equipment, I looked out my window toward the quiet street. The same calm, tree-lined block where nothing ever happened, until now. Somewhere out there, someone with a badge and a key was stealing more than just garbage. And I had a feeling that if we didn't uncover the truth soon, this neighborhood watch would turn into something much darker. Brian set up his laptop on my dining table, the glow from the screen cutting through the dark room like a flashlight in a cave. I brewed 2 cups of coffee. Neither of us was going to sleep anytime soon. The neighborhood outside was silent except for the faint hum of sprinklers turning on and off. He plugged in a small black device, a network sniffer, and said, "This will let us see what's moving through your home router. If someone's connected to your Wi-Fi without permission, or if data's being rerouted somewhere it shouldn't, we'll know." I leaned over his shoulder as he typed commands faster than I could follow. My background was in construction management, not cybersecurity, so watching him work was like seeing a magician perform. "There," he said after a few minutes. "See that? That's your TV, your phone, your smart thermostat. And that right there, that's an unknown IP address. Could that just be a neighbor's device?" I asked. He shook his head. "Nope. It's tunneling through your connection, meaning whoever it is, they're not just using your Wi-Fi, they're passing data through it." My stomach tightened. "Data from where?" He clicked around a few more times, eyes narrowing. "That's the interesting part. It's encrypted, but the packet signatures look like video feed data. And not just one stream, several." "Wait," I said slowly. "You're telling me someone is sending video footage through my internet?" He nodded. "Looks that way." I stared out the window toward the street where the cameras blinked faint red dots. "The neighborhood cameras," I whispered. Brian gave me a look. "You're thinking the same thing I am, that the HMA or neighborhood watch might be routing surveillance footage through residents' home networks. That would explain why your connection's been slowing down." It sounded insane, but also perfectly in line with the things I'd already seen. Brian kept digging, tracing the IP's source. After about 15 minutes, he froze. "Got it. The data's being forwarded to a local node, not an external server. Wanna guess where that node is located?" I raised an eyebrow. "Please don't say Cameron's office." He smirked. "Bingo." He spun the laptop toward me. The IP address resolved to an address right inside the HMA management building, the same converted townhouse I'd visited earlier that week. "That's impossible," I said. "They can't legally use residents' networks like that." Brian shrugged. "Legality's one thing. Capabilities another." Just then, I remembered the strange shed behind Cameron's office, the one that was always locked, the one even Todd had said wasn't part of any utility structure. "You think the shed could be where the hardware's stored?" I asked. Brian nodded thoughtfully. "It would make sense. Could house a data server or router system. But if it's connected directly to people's Wi-Fi, they're doing something way more advanced than just camera storage." We spent the next hour gathering every bit of information we could. Packet logs, timestamps, IP routes, all pointing to one thing. Someone was funneling video footage from private properties through my internet connection and back to the HOA network. When the sun started to rise, I sat back, exhausted but wired. "If we take this to the authorities, do you think they'll even believe it?" Brian sighed. "Not without direct evidence from the source. We'd need access to that node. If we could physically confirm the data's being stored there, then yeah, it's caseworthy." "So we get inside the shed," I said. Brian chuckled. "You make it sound easy." But I wasn't joking. That afternoon, I pretended to take a walk by Cameron's office. The shed was small wooden, and painted the same HOA-approved beige as everything else on the block. The door had a padlock, and a faint mechanical hum came from inside, like a generator or maybe a server fan. There were also 2 small security cameras mounted on the roof of the shed itself, one facing the door, the other aimed toward the parking lot. "Of course," I muttered. "They're watching the watcher." Later that evening, Brian and I regrouped. "We'll need to be careful," he said. "If that shed's tied to their surveillance system, it's probably alarmed or monitored. But maybe we don't need to get inside. We can scan the wireless signals around it. If we pick up data packets matching what we saw earlier, that'll confirm it's the source." He showed me a handheld scanner, no bigger than a TV remote. "We get close enough, and it'll sniff for signals. If the same encryption keys show up, we found our data hub." That night, we parked across the street from the office, our car lights off. The neighborhood was eerily still. Everyone else was inside watching Netflix or sleeping. Brian held up the scanner, its tiny LED pulsing as it searched for frequencies. "All right," he whispered, slowly now. We walked toward the shed, staying low behind parked cars. As we got closer, the scanner began beeping faster. "Signal strong," Brian muttered. "This is definitely it." Then the beeping stopped, replaced by a single long tone. "What's that mean?" I asked. He frowned. "It means the signal just cut off." We froze. The shed's humming sound suddenly went silent too. Then, from somewhere behind us, we heard the unmistakable crunch of gravel under a shoe. Someone was there. Brian pocketed the scanner and nodded toward the car. We didn't run, but we didn't look back either. When we got inside, I glanced through the windshield just in time to see a faint light flicker on inside the shed, as if someone had just entered it. We drove off, neither of us speaking for a good minute. Finally, Brian said, "Well, they know someone's sniffing around." "Good," I said, gripping the steering wheel. "Because now we know we're onto something real." Back home, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept looping through every conversation with Cameron, every watch alert, every night my Wi-Fi had lagged for no reason. This wasn't about garbage, or even community safety. It was control, full surveillance disguised as neighborhood security. And the worst part? I had a feeling I wasn't the only one being watched. The next day, when I checked my email, There was a new message waiting for me from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You're asking the wrong questions, Mark." No sender name. No reply option. Just one line of text inside. "Stop looking where you don't belong." That's when I knew, whatever the HOA and the neighborhood watch were doing, they weren't just hiding a system. They were protecting a secret that went much deeper than any of us realized. I didn't sleep that night. The anonymous email kept flashing through my mind like a warning siren I couldn't shut off. "You're asking the wrong questions, Mark." Who even knew I was asking questions? Only Brian, and maybe Todd, though I hadn't spoken to him since he mentioned that shed wasn't a utility structure. By morning, I was pacing around my kitchen, staring out the window at the street cameras. It hit me, those cameras weren't just watching the street. They were watching me. Brian arrived around 9 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept either. "You saw the email?" he asked, setting his coffee down. I nodded. How did they even get my address? I've never used my personal email for anything HOA related. "Doesn't matter," he said grimly. "They've got access to the neighborhood's data systems. If they're routing video through your home network, your devices could already be compromised." That thought made my stomach turn. So what do we do? He flipped open his laptop again. "We trace everything. No half measures. If we can find where the data originates, we can expose it. But we'll have to move fast before they realize we're still digging." 4 hours, we combed through network activity logs, looking for patterns. What we found was more alarming than either of us expected. Encrypted packets, pinging off routers across multiple households, not just mine. Each one connected back to the same IP node, the one housed inside Cameron's office. Brian looked up from the screen. "This isn't isolated to you. The entire neighborhood's network is part of a closed data grid." I frowned. "You mean?" "Yeah," he said. "Everyone's home Wi-Fi is linked into a shared system. The HOA and the watch are basically using residents as nodes in their own private surveillance network. Every camera, doorbell, and even smart device could be feeding into it." I ran a hand through my hair, heart pounding. So when they said the new security plan was about making the neighborhood safer, it was really about total visibility, Brian finished. And whoever's behind it has administrative access. Meaning they can view, redirect, or even edit footage. The implications hit me hard. They could frame anyone for anything. Exactly. That's when we decided to go deeper. Brian used a spoofed access request to mask our IP and gain temporary entry into the HOA's internal network. What popped up next made my blood run cold. A directory labeled Neighborhood Data Sync with dozens of subfolders sorted by address numbers. Mine was on the list. I clicked it open. Inside were time-stamped files, video clips, stills, motion alerts. But what froze me wasn't the footage of my driveway or yard. It was the one labeled Interior, Device 3. I opened it. There I was, sitting in my living room 2 nights ago, watching TV. No camera in my house should have captured that. Brian looked equally stunned. That's coming from inside your house. Probably through one of your smart devices." I turned off every light, unplugged every gadget, and slammed my phone face down. "We need to shut this down. Now." But before we could act, there was a knock at the door. Brian and I exchanged a look. I peered through the peephole. It was Cameron, flanked by another HOA board member I'd never met before, a tall woman with sharp glasses and a clipboard. "Mr. Daniels," Cameron said cheerfully when I opened the door, his tone too polished. "We've been getting some concerning reports about unusual network traffic originating from your property." My pulse jumped. "Unusual traffic?" He nodded. "Yes. You wouldn't happen to be running any unauthorized devices, would you? Our network monitoring has picked up some anomalies." Brian stepped in before I could answer. "Funny," he said flatly, "because we've been seeing anomalies too, all routing back to your office." Cameron's smile didn't waver, but I caught the flicker in his eyes. "Careful, Mr. Harper. Accusations like that can be damaging." The woman with him spoke for the first time. "We take cybersecurity very seriously. If there's been a misunderstanding, we'd prefer to resolve it quietly. Perhaps you could both stop by the HOA office this afternoon." Brian crossed his arms. "Yeah, we'll think about it." They left without another word, but as their car drove off, I noticed something new, a small white SUV idling at the corner with its lights off. "Brian," I said slowly, "they're watching us." He nodded grimly. "They're spooked." "That's good, means we're close." That afternoon, we dug into the digital trail further, trying to connect the HNA system to any external partners. What we found was worse than I expected. The HNA's funding reports included payments to a private tech security firm called Vigilant Solutions LLC, a company with ties to municipal law enforcement. Brian whistled. "So this isn't just a neighborhood project. This is data sharing between the HNA and private surveillance networks. In other words," I muttered, "they're selling people's data." By sunset, my paranoia was in overdrive. I unplugged my router entirely and used a backup hotspot just to stay off the grid. That night, while reviewing more logs, Brian suddenly frowned. "Mark, check this out." He showed me a new IP pinging our network. The signature matched my own laptop. "But my Wi-Fi's off," I said. He nodded. "Which means, someone's ghosting your device remotely." Before I could respond, my laptop screen flickered, and then for a split second I saw it. A live video feed of me and Brian, sitting right there in the living room. Then the screen went black. Brian slammed the lid shut. "They're inside. They know we're tracing them." My chest tightened. "So what now?" He looked up, jaw set. "We go public. Before they shut us down completely." I hesitated. "But we don't have proof that'll hold up in court yet. If we release this without full context, they'll spin it like we're paranoid." Brian stood. "Then we get proof, the kind that can't be erased. The kind sitting inside that shed." I knew he was right. But even as I nodded, a new alert flashed on my phone. HWA violation notice. Unauthorized electronic interference detected. They'd officially declared war. The next morning, I woke to find my mailbox overflowing with printed violation slips, noise complaints, yard citations, even one for improper equipment installation. All bogus. But the message was clear: I was being buried in paperwork to keep me quiet. Brian stared at the stack. "They're retaliating." "Then it's time to push back," I said, my voice steady. "At the next board meeting, we're not just asking questions. We're showing everyone what they've really built." Because by then, I understood the truth. The neighborhood watch wasn't just watching for us, it was watching us. The night of the HMA board meeting, the air felt heavier than usual. It was the kind of humidity that clung to your skin and made you feel like you were being watched even when you weren't. Or maybe I just knew too much by then. Brian pulled up to my driveway just after 6:30 p.m., his headlights cutting through the mist. "You ready for this?" he asked, stepping out of the car with his laptop bag slung over one shoulder. "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. "You got the flash drive?" He patted his jacket pocket. "Encrypted and duplicated. If something happens, there's a copy on a secure server." "Good." The HOA held their meetings in the community clubhouse, the same one Cameron had proudly renovated last year with funds that, now I knew, probably came from residents' data. The parking lot was already half full when we arrived. People milled about in small groups, clutching coffee cups and HOA newsletters, completely unaware of what was really happening behind the scenes. Inside, the board sat at a long folding table on the raised platform. Cameron was in the middle, wearing his usual smug half-smile, flanked by his vice president, that tall woman with the clipboard, Elaine, I remembered now, and two other board members. "Evening, neighbors," Cameron called as people found their seats. "Let's keep tonight's meeting short and productive. We've got a few updates on our security initiatives and neighborhood compliance." I stood up before he could finish. "Actually, Cameron, I've got something I need to address first." Every head turned. You could feel the ripple of tension. Cameron blinked, clearly annoyed but masking it well. "Mr. Daniels, you'll have a chance to speak during community comments." "Let's." "No," I cut in. "This can't wait." Brian shifted beside me, readying his laptop. I caught Cameron's eye, and for the first time, his smile faltered. "Go ahead," he said tightly. "What's this about?" I stepped toward the front. "It's about the neighborhood watch system you've been pushing. The one that's supposed to keep us safe." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cameron leaned forward, lacing his fingers. "Yes, what about it?" "It's not just watching the streets," I said. It's watching us. Every house, every device, every camera in this community is part of a shared surveillance network. And that network isn't being managed by residents. It's being routed through your office. The room erupted in confused whispers. Cameron raised his voice over the noise. That's an outrageous claim. Where's your proof? Brian tapped a few keys and projected the first image onto the wall, a network map, showing every household's router connected to one central node, H-Way Server 12, admin access, Cameron Bishop. This, Brian said calmly, is the infrastructure log from your system. We traced the data flow ourselves. Cameron stood up, his face pale but defiant. That's a gross invasion of privacy. You had no authorization to access our secure network. I shot back, neither did you have authorization to spy on your neighbors. Gasps filled the room. Elaine tried to interject, but Brian brought up another image. This one froze everyone in place. It was a still frame from my own living room camera, clearly showing me sitting on the couch, a clip neither I nor anyone else had ever recorded. This, Brian said quietly, was stored under the H-Way data directory labeled by address. Meaning, residents' indoor feeds were being collected without consent. Cameron's voice cracked. That's not possible. The system doesn't record interiors. Brian smirked slightly. Guess someone forgot to disable test mode. The room went dead silent. Finally, a woman in the back, Mrs. Harper, who'd been part of the watch since day one, stood up. Cameron, is this true? Are you saying you've been watching our families inside our homes? He raised his hands, stammering. No. Of course not. These files must be remnants from the vendor's testing phase. Then explain this, I said, pulling out the H-Way budget printout I downloaded. Vigilant Solutions, LLC. You've been paying them monthly fees under neighborhood security support. That company doesn't sell home cameras, they sell data access. Cameron's jaw tightened. That's enough, Mr. Daniels. You're done here. He motioned to Elaine, who whispered something to one of the board members. The man stood and approached us, as if to escort us out. Brian quickly minimized the files and slipped the flash drive into his pocket. You sure about this, Mark? He whispered. I nodded. Yeah. We've come too far to stop now. Mr. Daniels, Cameron said coldly, for your own good, I suggest you leave before this becomes a legal matter. You violated multiple H-Way statutes. I cut him off. You mean the same H-Way statutes that let you spy on residents and cover it up with fake security language? I'm not leaving. The murmuring turned into outright shouting. People demanded explanations. Others pulled out their phones, recording everything. Cameron's composure cracked for good. His voice rose, desperate and defensive. You don't understand what's at stake here, he shouted. You think this is about control? This neighborhood's safety depends on oversight. The watch has stopped crimes you don't even know about. We've caught trespassers, vandals, drug deals. At the cost of privacy? I snapped. You don't get to decide that for everyone. You should have told us what you were doing. For a moment, the room hung in tense silence. Then Mrs. Harper's voice rang out again. We trusted you, Cameron. Cameron slammed his notebook shut. Meeting adjourned, he barked, storming toward the door. As he passed me, he muttered under his breath, You'll regret this, Daniels. But before he could leave, Brian hit play on one final video. It showed Cameron in his office, recorded from a hidden internal camera, accessing resident files, typing in search queries for Daniel property logs. The room exploded with outrage. I didn't say a word. Cameron froze, realizing there was no way out. He turned pale, eyes darting between the screen and the crowd. Then he bolted, pushing past people and disappearing into the hallway. Brian looked at me. Well, he said quietly, that escalated fast. I exhaled shakily. Yeah. But now everyone knows. We stood there amid the chaos, watching as residents crowded the front of the room, shouting questions at the remaining board members. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. Cameron still had power, influence, and whatever system he'd built with Vigilant Solutions. But for the first time, the community was awake. And that, at least, was a start. That night, sleep wasn't even an option. After what happened at the meeting, I knew Cameron wouldn't just walk away quietly. You could see it in his eyes before he stormed out, that twitch of someone who just lost control of the narrative and would do anything to take it back. Brian and I agreed to meet at my house around 9 p.m. to secure the files and back everything up to cloud servers before Cameron, or whoever he was working with, could tamper with them. I'd already disconnected my home router from the neighborhood network just in case. When Brian arrived, he was holding a small portable hard drive and a thermos of coffee. "We're in for a long night," he said, shutting the door behind him. "Good," I replied. "Because after today, I'm not taking any chances." We set up in my living room, laptops open, wires everywhere, routers blinking like tiny beacons of paranoia. Brian plugged in the external drive and started encrypting our data dump. We've got logs, video evidence, system maps, and HOA documents. Enough to blow this open if it goes public. "Then we make sure it does go public," I said. He gave a skeptical look. "You realize if we leak this, we're also exposing ourselves. They'll come for us, legally, financially, maybe even physically." I hesitated but nodded. "I know. But Cameron's already crossed that line. The question is, how far will he go now that he's cornered?" Before Brian could answer, the power flickered, once, twice, then cut out completely. We both froze. The room fell into total darkness, except for the faint glow of Brian's laptop battery light. "That's not random," he said quietly. "They're trying to isolate you." I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and checked the breaker box. Nothing tripped. Outside, the rest of the street still glowed with porch lights and Christmas decor, meaning the outage was only at my place. Brian joined me by the window, peeking through the blinds. There's a car parked near the mailbox. Black SUV. No headlights, but I can see someone inside. I felt my stomach drop. Cameron. Could be. Or one of his people. We moved fast. Brian switched his laptop to hotspot mode. I'm rerouting through my phone's signal. We can still upload the files. But the connection sputtered, jammed or blocked. "No signal," he muttered. "They're using a signal scrambler." How the hell? HOA has access to the neighborhood security hub. They could kill any Wi-Fi or LTE range within certain parameters. It's not legal, but it's possible. We were officially being boxed in. I tried calling the police, but my phone showed no service. Brian's did too. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "They're really doing this. They're burning their tracks in real time." "Then we go analog," I said. "Grab your drive. We're leaving." We shoved the laptop and hard drive into his backpack. I grabbed my car keys and headed for the garage. As soon as I hit the remote, the door creaked open halfway and stopped, jammed. "Seriously?" Brian hissed. I hit the switch again, nothing. Then faintly, over the hum of distant crickets, came the sound of tires crunching gravel. The black SUV was moving. Slowly. Toward the house. "Back door," Brian whispered. We slipped through the kitchen exit, cutting across my yard. The air was damp and heavy with that electric pre-storm tension. We reached the fence, and that's when a spotlight beam sliced through the dark, pinning us like deer in headlights. "Mark!" a voice boomed. "Put down the bag and stop where you are." It wasn't the police. The voice was too familiar. Cameron. Brian's whisper was sharp. "He's got backup." I glanced over the fence. Another figure was moving along the driveway, wearing a neighborhood watch jacket. So this was it. Cameron had turned his watch volunteers into enforcers. I shouted back, "You're trespassing, Cameron. You don't have the right." He cut me off, stepping closer. Even in the beam, I could see his expression, calm, almost smug again. "You think you've exposed something, Daniels, but you don't even know what you're dealing with. You've compromised private systems owned by the HNA, accessed confidential data. That's a federal offense. Spying on residents is a federal offense too," Brian snapped. Cameron laughed under his breath. "You really think anyone's going to believe you over me? I'm the elected HOA president. You're just a guy with a grudge." He took another step forward, and I realized something. His confidence wasn't just arrogance. It was insurance. He'd probably already rewritten the system logs, rerouted blame, maybe even planted something in our data to make us look guilty. Brian caught on too. "He's framing us," he whispered. Cameron must have heard, because he smiled. "By morning, you'll both be getting visits from real investigators. My legal team's already drafting the complaint. That's when I saw movement behind him, flashlights from other residents approaching. Maybe they'd heard the shouting. Cameron turned toward them, distracted for just a second, and I didn't waste it. "Run," I hissed. Brian vaulted the fence, and I followed, landing hard on the other side. We sprinted through the neighboring yard, cutting toward the main street. Behind us, Cameron shouted orders, but the confusion from arriving residents gave us just enough of a head start. We ducked behind a row of hedges near the playground, both of us panting. "You got the drive?" I asked. He patted his jacket. "Still got it." "Good. We can't go back home." "Not tonight." He nodded. "We'll use my cousin's workshop, it's off network. We'll upload everything from there." Before we left, I looked back toward my street. The SUV lights flashed once, then turned off again, disappearing into the night. They weren't done. Not even close. But neither were we. That night, as Brian and I sat in his cousin's dusty workshop surrounded by humming servers and old tools, I realized something important. This wasn't just about our neighborhood anymore. What Cameron had built was part of something bigger. Data companies, H-way networks, safety systems, all interconnected, all quietly harvesting private lives under the label of community protection. When Brian finally got the files uploading, I leaned back, staring at the progress bar crawling across the screen. "Once this is out there," I said quietly, "there's no taking it back." He looked at me and nodded. "Then let's make sure it's worth it." As the last file finished transferring, I heard a distant rumble of thunder. Outside, rain began to fall, washing over the quiet suburban street. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel scared, I felt ready. Because this was the night they tried to bury the truth. And the night we made sure it couldn't be buried again. The morning after the storm, I woke up to pounding on my front door, not the usual HOA pamphlet or flyer drop, but the kind of heavy, deliberate knock that makes your chest tighten before you even move. Brian had crashed on my couch, his laptop still open on the coffee table. The hard drive was gone, we'd hidden it under a loose panel in the attic. We looked at each other silently. Neither of us said it, but we both knew who it could be. I pulled back the curtain just enough to see two men in suits, standing beside a white sedan with tinted windows. One of them held a folder, the other a small badge clipped to his belt. "FBI," Brian whispered. I shook my head. Or it could just be Cameron's show. I opened the door halfway. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Daniels," the taller man said. "We're here regarding an active investigation into unauthorized access to private data systems belonging to your homeowners association and the Neighborhood Watch Network. We need to ask you a few questions." I tried to play it cool. "Do you have a warrant?" He held up a document. "Search and seizure for all electronic equipment on the premises." My pulse jumped. It looked official, seals, stamps, the whole 9 yards, but something about the wording was off. It didn't mention any agency, just Neighborhood Data Oversight Task Force. Brian leaned over my shoulder and muttered, "That's not real." Before I could reply, one of the men said sharply, "Step aside, sir." They pushed their way in, moving with practiced precision, too fast, too smooth. One immediately went for the router, the other headed toward my study. I followed, trying to mask my anger. "Who authorized this?" I demanded. "You can't just." The taller one interrupted. "You've been linked to data theft and property damage related to HOA systems. Cooperation will make this easier." That's when I spotted the tiny logo on his lanyard, the HOA's insignia. I laughed bitterly. "You're not federal. You're private security." He didn't deny it. Just stared at me with the faintest smirk. "Mr. Daniels, we represent the association's legal interests. You're a person of interest in a criminal breach. I'd suggest you let us do our job." Brian moved to block him. "You're trespassing." The guy didn't flinch. "We're protecting community assets." I reached for my phone, pretending to dial 911. The shorter one noticed, lunged, and snatched it from my hand. "That won't work," he said coldly. "Your line's disabled." And just like that, I knew Cameron was behind it. Every step, the fake warrants, the power outage, the setup, was designed to make me look like the criminal. By the time they left, my home was half ransacked. They'd taken my desktop, my old laptop, even the USB drive I used for work. They left behind one thing though, an envelope on my kitchen counter. Inside was a single printed page with HMA letterhead. Notice of suspension. Mr. Daniel Reed is hereby suspended from all HOA privileges and services, effective immediately, pending investigation into cybercrime and vandalism of community property. At the bottom, Cameron's signature gleamed in thick, black ink. Brian crumpled the page. He's not just trying to silence you, he's setting you up to take the fall. I nodded. Then we go public before he can finish the job. We grabbed what little tech we had left, Brian's backup laptop and the hidden hard drive, and drove out of the neighborhood. Every camera we passed felt like an eye trained on us. We ended up at a diner off the highway. The kind of place with cracked leather booths and lukewarm coffee but decent Wi-Fi. Brian pulled up our encrypted cloud folder. All the data's safe, he said. We can drop it to a journalist, a watchdog group, even Reddit if we have to. Not yet, I said, scanning the window for suspicious cars. We need proof Cameron tampered with the system, or else he'll spin it. We can't just leak and hope for the best. Brian sighed. So what, we break back in? I didn't answer right away, but the idea was already forming. We knew the HOA office was in a shared co-working building. Cameron often worked late. He liked to be seen working, pretending to be the over-dedicated president. That meant the systems were live and vulnerable. Tonight, I said. We finish this tonight. Brian frowned. You're serious? If we don't, he wins. He paints us as criminals, the HOA deletes the files, and everyone forgets this ever happened. That night, we parked a few blocks away from the office and approached through the back alley. The storm drains still dripped from last night's rain. I picked the side lock, a skill I learned from my dad, who used to be a locksmith, and we slipped inside. The hallway smelled like fresh paint and cleaning chemicals. We moved silently past dark offices until we reached Cameron's workspace. Through the glass, we could see the glow of his laptop screen. He was there, typing furiously. Damn, Brian whispered. He's rewriting logs right now. We waited until he got up, probably to grab coffee from the break room, then slipped inside. Brian plugged in a flash drive while I searched the desk drawers. There were printed spreadsheets, member lists, camera logs, billing records, and a few labeled Project Warden. What's that? I asked. Brian's eyes widened as he scrolled through Cameron's laptop. It's worse than we thought. The HNA's data is part of a statewide network. Dozens of neighborhoods feeding camera footage into one system, all tagged by license plates, face IDs, everything. I froze. That's illegal surveillance. And it's being sold. I snapped photos of the documents just as Cameron's voice echoed down the hall. Who's there? We barely had time to react. Brian yanked the flash drive, and we ducked under the desk. The door creaked open, and Cameron stepped in, his silhouette cutting across the light. He walked to the desk, sipping his coffee, scrolling through his computer again. Then he stopped. I saw it in his reflection on the screen. He knew someone had been there. Come out, he said softly. You're just making it worse for yourself. Brian mouthed go, and before I could argue, he tossed a small USB stick across the room. It hit the floor with a loud clack. Cameron turned. We bolted. By the time he realized what was happening, we were already sprinting down the hall, crashing through the exit door and into the parking lot. Behind us, Cameron shouted something, but the adrenaline drowned it out. We didn't stop running until we hit the car. Brian was grinning like a maniac. Got it. We have everything: financial records, camera feeds, even contracts with the data brokers. For the first time in weeks, I let myself smile. Then it's over. But it wasn't. The next morning, I woke up to a headline blowing up across social media. Local man under investigation for HOA data theft and harassment. Officials confirm breach. The article had my photo. And at the bottom? A quote from Cameron himself. It's unfortunate that one resident's paranoia endangered the safety of our entire community. They'd beaten me to the punch. He'd framed me, perfectly. And now, if I wanted to clear my name, I'd have to burn everything. The next few days felt like living in a fog. Every time I opened my phone, there was another article, another comment thread, another neighbor whispering online about the guy who tried to hack the HOA. My face was everywhere, screenshots, memes, even a Reddit post with the headline, HOA man gone rogue, paranoid resident exposed for data theft. They'd taken fragments of the truth and twisted them just enough to make me look like a lunatic. The HOA didn't even have to lie much. Cameron just filled in the blanks with confidence and corporate polish. And people believed him. The police came by again. This time, real ones. They didn't arrest me, but they confiscated more of my stuff and left me with a polite but chilling warning: it's best if you don't leave town while this investigation is active. Brian and I went dark. We moved out of the neighborhood temporarily, crashing in a small Airbnb 2 towns over. Every night, we sat at the tiny kitchen table surrounded by takeout boxes and laptop cables, trying to figure out our next move. Cameron's already fed his story to every outlet that'll listen, Brian said. If we drop the files now, they'll just say it's fabricated. He's controlling the narrative, I muttered, rubbing my temples. We need someone with reach, someone who can verify it before they kill it. That's when Brian pulled up a contact from his old cybersecurity job, a local investigative journalist named Maya Chun, known for exposing municipal data breaches and corporate surveillance. She's not afraid of HMA suits, he said. If she believes us, we might stand a chance. We sent her a message from a throwaway email, attaching a fraction of the data as proof. She responded within the hour. From maya.chun@exposenews.org subject, this looks real. Meet me. We met her the next morning at a diner off Route 7, halfway between her city office and the suburb we'd fled from. She was sharp, direct, and exactly the kind of person you'd want in your corner. You're saying the HMA built a private surveillance network and funneled data to brokers? She asked, flipping through printed screenshots. Yes, Brian said. We have the contracts, timestamps, everything. They used the neighborhood watch as a cover to install cameras, but they weren't protecting people, they were collecting information. Maya leaned back, tapping her pen on the table. If this is true, it's not just an HMA scandal. This is corporate espionage. And it's going to blow up. We handed her the hard drive, the one thing Cameron didn't know existed. She promised to verify everything before publishing. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. But then the threats started. It began with an email. From anonymous@outlook.com. Stop. Or you'll regret it. Then a voicemail, just silence, but I could hear faint breathing. And one night, as I drove back from grabbing groceries, I noticed headlights following me. The same car. Every turn. Every detour. When I finally pulled into a gas station, it sped off. I called Brian immediately. They know we met with Maya. He cursed under his breath. Cameron must have tapped one of the feeds near the diner. He's watching everything. A week later, Maya called. Her voice was steady, but I could tell she was shaken. I've confirmed it all, she said. The contracts are real. The shell companies that bought the data all trace back to the same parent firm Cameron's brother runs. This is huge, Daniel. But publishing this means you'll be front and center. They'll come after you harder. I don't care anymore, I said. As long as the truth gets out. When the story broke, it spread like wildfire. The headline read, Suburban Surveillance: How a Neighborhood Watch Became a Data Harvesting Scheme. The article exposed everything: the HOA's manipulation, the data funneling, the fake task force security visit, even Cameron's attempt to frame me. Within hours, the HOA's website went down, the board resigned, and the local police department launched an internal review. But it wasn't exactly victory. My reputation was still in shambles. Half the community still believed Cameron's narrative, convinced I'd exaggerated things for attention. My home had been vandalized twice, and someone even left a note on my door that read, "We trusted you." Still, there were moments of quiet justice. Cameron's name started trending, for all the wrong reasons. The HOA's parent security contractor severed ties with him, and an official investigation was opened into data privacy violations. Maya called again 2 weeks later. They'll spin it for a while, but you did the right thing, she said. You forced it into daylight. Maybe, I said quietly. But I lost my home in the process. She paused. Sometimes the price of exposing control is losing what they controlled you with. That stuck with me. In the months that followed, I moved to a new neighborhood, one without an HOA, without meetings, without committees pretending to care about safety. Just people living their lives, looking out for each other the way real neighbors should. Brian stayed close, still working remotely, still paranoid enough to double-check every router we installed. Sometimes I drive past the old neighborhood, now with its security gates gone and the HOA sign stripped from the entrance. It looks quiet, almost peaceful. But I know what it really was, a place that mistook control for safety. As for Cameron, he disappeared after the investigation went public. No arrest, no trial, just gone. Maybe he ran. Maybe he's still out there somewhere, waiting to rebuild his little empire under another name. But I've learned something through all this. You can hide cameras, you can fake reports, you can bury data, but you can't hide the truth forever. Because eventually, someone will see what you're doing. And this time, I made sure everyone did. If you've made it this far, you're definitely one of us. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, because I've got more real neighborhood stories coming that'll make you question just how much your HOA really knows about you.